In at number 5 we have the Soyuz 11. On June 6, the cosmonauts Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev were launched into space aboard Soyuz 11 on a mission to dock and enter Salyut-1, the Soviet space station that had been placed in orbit in April. The mission's goal was to set a record for the longest time spent in space. The spacecraft successfully docked with the station, and the cosmonauts spent 23 days orbiting the Earth. On June 30th, they left Salyut-1 and began re-entry procedures. When they fired the explosive bolts to separate the Soyuz 11 re-entry capsule from another stage of the spacecraft, a critical valve was jerked open. 100 miles above the Earth, the capsule was suddenly exposed to the nearly pressureless environment of space. As the capsule rapidly depressurized, Patsayev tried to close the valve by hand but failed. Minutes later, the cosmonauts were dead. They became the first people to ever die in space. The last message that they sent to Earth was them trying to scream for help, but they couldn't due to the loss of pressure. All they heard from the crew was them gasping for air and then popping sounds from the air in their lungs expanding. The spacecraft landed itself perfectly on Earth, fully intact. When it was opened, they found the remains of the crew, with blood dripping from their ears and nose, and their skin had turned blue due to the lack of oxygen. Not many today have heard the recording, but it is sure to send chills down anyone's spine hearing these poor men last few minutes in space.
Number 4 on this list is the Jade rabbit. The Jade rabbit is actually a full-on bunny rabbit who lives on the moon. Now I'm gonna be honest guys, this isn't the scariest of the bunch for sure. He's actually kinda cute, but I wanted to include him because his power is super cool. He lives on the moon with Chang'e, and together they make the elixir for immortality. Wei Yi Hong details the legend beautifully by saying, "One day the Jade Emperor decided that he wanted some help preparing the elixir of life for the immortals. Fearing that humans would be too selfish and untrustworthy for such an important role, he thought an animal would be better suited for this responsibility. The Jade Emperor came down to Earth disguised as a beggar and went to search for a worthy animal in the forest. As a famished and frail man, he cried out for help and food, and eventually 3 animals came to see if they could help: the monkey, the fox, and the rabbit. The animals were sympathetic to the old beggar's plight and went into the forest to search for food. The monkey returned laden with fruits he had gathered from up in the trees. The fox returned with some fish he had caught in a nearby stream. Despite searching throughout the forest, the rabbit could not find any food for the old man from the woodland floor. When he returned much later and saw the beggar sat next to the fire eating the fruits and the fish, the rabbit felt sad that he had been unable to find him any food. Realizing that he could sacrifice himself so that the man could eat, the rabbit threw himself onto the fire in an ultimate act of selflessness. But at that instant, the beggar turned back into the Jade Emperor and stopped the rabbit from being burned. Having found the most noble of creatures to take on the role of creating elixirs, the Jade Emperor carried him up to the moon, where he learned to make divine medicines and he could be kept safe from humans wishing to steal the elixir of life. Every now and again, this mythical creature comes down to Earth to interact with humans. Although if it does come to you, then make sure you don't have a selfish bone in your body, or else it's gonna sense it and then bad things could befall you.
In at number 3 we have Lost Cosmonaut. The Lost Cosmonauts are subject of a theory alleging that some Soviet cosmonauts went to outer space, but their existence has never been publicly acknowledged by either the Soviet or Russian space authorities. The Soviet Union attempted to launch human spaceflights before Yuri Gagarin's first spaceflight, and those cosmonauts on board died in those attempts. 2 brothers who were former amateur radio operators made audio recordings which support the theory that the Soviet space program covered up cosmonaut deaths in the 1960s. One of the recordings in question is from November 1963. The recording is of a woman who died on a solo mission into space. In the recording you can hear her screaming. She is shouting about how the capsule is heating up. You can hear her screaming, "It is getting hot." She is frantically looking for someone to help her, but once she was up there she was on her own. It is believed the capsule burned up on re-entry and the woman died. When asked about the recording, the Soviets claimed that the space mission was unmanned and no woman died during re-entry. The evidence seems to prove this wrong, and their denial proves the possibility of the cover-up. In at number 2, sounds of Saturn. The ringed planet and its moon Enceladus have a lot to say to each other. Though it's been gone for nearly a year, the Cassini spacecraft continues to fuel new studies of Saturn and its many moons. In particular, Cassini's unique and close-up view of the system during its grand finale orbits produced data that have revealed how plasma waves moving outward from the planet interact with both its rings and its moons. Now, in a video produced by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory using this data, you can tune into the sounds of Saturn, the radio emission generated by these plasma waves as they travel along the invisible magnetic field lines linking the planet with its icy moon Enceladus. As it plunged closer to the planet during its grand finale on September 2nd, 2017, Cassini's radio and plasma wave science instrument picked up electromagnetic waves as it traveled through the Enceladus flux tube, a sort of conduit between the moon and the planet, bounded by magnetic field lines and through which charged particles can flow back and forth. The waves fall in the range of human hearing, and scientists have now amplified them into the audio file below, compressing about 16 minutes worth of data down to 28.5 seconds of scary space sounds. Finally, in at number 1 we have Milky Way signal. A fast radio burst was detected from within our galaxy for the very first time. We may be closer to uncovering its origin. On April 28, 2020, 2 ground-based radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves. It only lasted a mere millisecond, but for astonished astronomers it was a major discovery, representing the first time a fast radio burst, or FRB, had ever been detected so close to Earth. Located just 30,000 light-years from our planet, the event was firmly within the Milky Way, and it was, to all intents and purposes, almost impossible to miss. The Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment certainly had no problems picking it up. I quote, "We weren't even looking in the right direction and we still saw it loud and clear in our peripheral vision," one of them noted. One of the major problems with detecting FRBs, aside from most of them having been so far away, is that they are so fleeting. They've been and gone in the blink of an eye despite being 100 million times more powerful than the sun. They can release as much energy in a few thousandths of a second as the sun in 100 years. Ideally, astronomers would discover an object and focus one or more different telescopes at it, but the ephemeral nature of these bursts removes any such opportunity. But despite these challenges, astronomers have succeeded in building up a bank of knowledge about FRBs, most of which has been based on the dozens of recorded events from beyond our own galaxy. For starters, we know they are bright flashes of radio light lasting from microseconds to milliseconds. All sky searches for them also suggest that thousands of these bursts occur in the sky every single day. It will take many years of research to understand exactly what these signals mean. Until then, we can just wonder about what is out there among the galaxy.
Number 5 on this list is the Fermi Paradox. This one is all about aliens, but maybe not how you might expect. Science Focus says, in 1950, Enrico Fermi, the man who built the first nuclear reactor, was having lunch in the canteen of the Los Alamos bomb lab in New Mexico when he suddenly said, "Where is everybody?" Everyone around the table knew exactly what he meant. Decades later, Fermi's question was examined independently by the American physicists Michael Hart and Frank Tipler. Hart considered aliens spreading throughout our Milky Way, and Tipler considered self-replicating machines that, on arrival at a planetary system, exploit the resources to build 2 copies of themselves that continue voyaging. Both concluded that even at modest speeds of travel, every star in the galaxy would be visited in a fraction of the age of the Milky Way. As Fermi realized, the aliens should be here on Earth. They do not appear to be, though. This became the Fermi Paradox. Hundreds of explanations have been proposed. They include the ideas that we are the first intelligence to arise in the galaxy and so are totally alone, and that we are a nursery world off limits to advanced civilizations that might adversely affect our development. A more mundane possibility is that there is no paradox because any signs of visitation in the distant past would be erased by wind, rain, and geological processes. Recently, however, a team led by Dr. Jonathan Carroll Nellenbach of the University of Rochester, New York, has proposed that our sun may simply have been bypassed by a wave of extraterrestrial expansion. So why are aliens not here? Have they already been here and we didn't even know? Or did they just bypass our solar system altogether? Or is all of this nonsense and the universe is just so big that they haven't gotten to us yet? It's certainly something interesting to think about. Considering the universe is infinite and there are so many places and planets we don't know about, it seems ridiculous to think that we're the only intelligent life or the first intelligent life in everything. Like, that's as if we hit the biggest lottery ever. Comment down below what you think about this alien question and why aren't they here yet?
In and up before we have wow. In 1977, the sound of extraterrestrials were heard by human ears for the very first time. The wow signal was detected by astronomer Jerry Eman using Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope. It is a radio signal detector that was pointed at a group of stars called Chi Sagittarii in the constellation Sagittarius. When scanning the skies around the stars, Eman captured a 72-second burst of radio waves. He circled the reading and wrote "wow" next to it, hence the signal's name. He was desperately searching for the signal to get a second reading, but he never found it again. Over the last 40 years, the signal has been cited as evidence that we are not alone in the galaxy. Experts and laypeople alike believe that finally we had evidence of alien life. The wow signal is the strongest signal we have ever received from space. We may never know who or what caused the signal, but it is the strongest proof Earth has ever had that there is something else out there. Hopefully, whatever it is, it's peaceful or like Earth.
Number 3 on this list is the central black hole. At the center of almost every single known galaxy in the universe, which there are about 2 trillion of, there is a huge black hole just chilling in the middle. These aren't your everyday typical black holes though, they are gargantuan in size and weight. Some of these beasts weigh around 50 billion times that of our sun. Just an absolutely insane number that our brains truly can't really comprehend. But how did this absolute unit of a black hole get there and why is it so big? Well, NASA doesn't really know, and they are desperately trying to find out. Black holes are one of the most interesting things in our universe and one of the things that we know very little about. The question of where does a black hole actually go to will probably never be answered because we'll never be able to go inside without getting completely crushed into oblivion. But figuring out why they're in the middle of pretty much every notable galaxy is important. If we can understand this, then we can understand how a galaxy is formed and potentially the lifespan of certain galaxies. Also, knowing what creates these black holes will help us better understand them and see if our planet will ever be at risk of such a disaster. Granted, maybe ignorance is bliss in this case, because even if we knew a black hole was coming, there's really nothing that we'd be able to do about it. Number 2 on this list is dark energy. For a long time, the only force that was thought to be operating on the entire universe was gravity. This was everywhere in the universe and decided pretty much how things played out. Gravity is not alone anymore though, or at least since the discovery of dark energy. Dark energy is this invisible force that is everywhere in the universe and is partially responsible for speeding up the expansion of said universe. Apparently this energy overtook gravity 5 billion years ago as the dominant force that's expanding the universe, and that's why it's happening in the first place. The thing is, we have no idea what this dark energy is or why it's here. Similar to dark matter, it feels like this has just appeared, and because we can't see it or have no idea of its origin, we have no idea how much weight it really has on us and our current laws of physics. Apparently 2/3 of the energy mass of the universe is made up of this stuff and we have no idea about it. That's kind of scary if you think about it, and it puts in perspective how little we know about things. Oftentimes I think we fall into a trap assuming that our species is far more advanced than it actually is, but when you consider that we have no idea where 2/3 of the energy mass in our universe came from or what it is, it really brings you back to reality. I feel like this might be one of the hardest mysteries on this list to solve, and it's gonna take a while. And number 1 on this list is the multiverse. What seems to be the staple of a plotline of any good sci-fi movie these days is the multiverse, something that we truly know nothing about. The theory is basically that there is an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of possibilities and outcomes, and it's all just freaking infinite and honestly kind of hurts my brain to think about for very long. But is there any substance to this theory? How will we be able to know if it's true or not, and what would that mean for us? So the multiverse theory all comes from another theory called inflation theory. Inflation theory is the thinking that in basically a second, when our universe was just a baby, everything started inflating and growing super fast. expanding outwards in all directions. Now, it's thought that the inflation of our universe stopped 14 billion years ago, but that when our universe stopped, the beginning of another started, and so on and so forth. It's very complicated, and in all honesty, I don't really understand all of it, but that's the bare bones. There's also the thinking that because life is so hard to support, as in you need so many things to go right in the universe, it seems extremely unlikely that if there is only one universe, life would have actually formed. If there were multiple or infinite universes, there would be enough chances though that one or more are bound to have the necessary things to create life. Either way, if this is true, then it obviously changes a lot of things about how we view our universe and the role we play in it. Maybe there's another version of you just chilling in a totally alternate universe right now, except instead of hands, you have wings or something. A little ridiculous, I know, but if universes are infinite, then you never know. Number 5 on this list is Tiangou. Tiangou is a massive legendary creature from China. This mythical creature is from space and has played a large part in it. Medium says, Tiangou is a creature depicted as a dog or meteor in Chinese folklore that ate the moon or sun during an eclipse. Its name translates directly to heavenly dog, and in addition to eating celestial bodies, Tiangou was assigned to the task of guarding the gates of heaven. Tiangou's enormous size made him an obvious choice for the task, however, that same characteristic struck fear in the heart of humanity. So for this definition, Tiangou isn't too scary, but actually kind. However, he's been noted by some to actually have a taste for human children. This is just a rumor and could be proven false, but then again, nobody really knows any of these things for sure. What we do know is that this is a massive beast, literally bigger than planets, that has immense power and has come from space. If it didn't eat children and was a calm dog, that'd still be a pretty scary pup to come face to face with. Number 4 on this list is dark matter. You've definitely heard the term dark matter get thrown around a bunch before, and you've probably wondered, what the heck is it? Well, if that sounds like you, then you aren't alone. Scientists all across the globe are still wondering what dark matter is and the purpose that it serves. Science Focus says dark matter gives out no light or too little light for us to detect. We know it exists because we see the effect of its gravity on the visible stars and galaxies. For instance, the Milky Way could not have dragged in enough matter to make it stars in the 13.82 billion years since the Big Bang, without there being a lot of invisible matter whose extra gravity speeded things up. The European Space Agency's Planck satellite found that dark matter accounts for 26.8% of the mass energy of the universe, compared with the 4.3% of normal atomic energy. It therefore outweighs the visible stars and galaxies by a factor of 6. Puzzlingly, no Earth-based experiment has found any evidence of dark matter despite decades of searching. It is conceivable that it's not our theory of matter that needs modification, but our theory of gravity. Or that dark matter is not a fluid made of a single particle, but is complex like the atomic matter we see around us. Maybe the universe is filled with dark stars and dark planets and dark life. There is an entire universe of dark matter that we don't even know about. Like, what the heck is this stuff and what's it composed of? Why can't our eyes see it? Why doesn't something this dense even show up? It's all very confusing and nobody can figure it out right now. Dark matter is one of the biggest mysteries in the universe, and understanding what it is and how it works could completely change our understanding of gravity and matter as a whole. Hopefully NASA can get a grasp on it soon and the mystery can finally be solved. Number 3 on this list is Cthulhu. Cthulhu is a creature that has come from the Lovecraftian universe. Even though this is a fictional character, many people have thought that there could be some serious legitimacy to Cthulhu, and maybe Lovecraft writings wasn't as fictional as we initially thought it was. Cthulhu is described as being a cosmic being of terrifying power and as the manifestation of chaos and destruction. Those are some pretty fearsome things to be associated with, and not a creature I really want to be messing around with. Cthulhu's appearance is definitely grotesque as well. Typically depicted as a dark green color, it has massive wings on its back, an octopus-like exterior but with a body similar to a human, and also this massive bulbous sack thing that has huge tentacles coming out of it. Yeah, definitely not the type of dude that you'd want to bring to the club to wingman you. Cthulhu is a great old one, which is a super powerful being that has godlike abilities. Right now, this grotesque looking beast is located at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean in what people believe to be a very deep slumber. This is good for all of humankind and the world in general, because having this beast wake up probably means full-on destruction of our planet. Cthulhu is thought to have the ability to communicate telepathically with human beings without being anywhere even close to them. In fact, deep worshippers of this ancient god have tried to experiment with ways to contact it. Even though it's in a deep slumber, its brain is still active and can talk with you if you're able to summon it. This is very difficult though, and only a few people have claimed to be successful. Let's pray that Cthulhu is happy with its nap right now, because waking it up would just be all types of bad. Number 2 on this list is Nidhoggr. Nidhoggr is probably a mythical creature who you haven't heard of, but let me warn you that he's very ferocious. Nidhoggr is a massive and very dangerous dragon that is in Norse mythology. He's said to gnaw at the roots of Yggdrasil, the tree which supports the 9 worlds. Mythology.net says Nidhoggr is a tremendous dragon. His body is covered in bright scales and horns erupt from his head. A pair of forelegs complete with massive claws help him to rip at the roots of Yggdrasil, but he has no back legs, only a serpentine tail. Beneath his bat-like wings, he carries the corpses of criminals. His mammoth body can be found twisting through the roots of Yggdrasil, especially around Niflheimr, the cold world from which all the rivers of Midgard spring. Occasionally he might slither into hell to visit the dark goddess who some people consider his master. So in case you don't know, Niflheimr is a totally separate world from our own, and therefore Nidhoggr is actually from space. This dragon doesn't just sit around looking menacing though, it's got a very important role to play in Norse mythology. Mythology.net goes on to say, balance is extremely important in Norse mythology, and while Nidhoggr doesn't represent a ghastly force, he is still important to supporting the balance of Yggdrasil. A great eagle, who represents wisdom and virtue, perches in the uppermost branches of the tree, while Nidhoggr, representing chaos and evil, lurks in its roots. The constant tension between the eagle and the dragon is fueled by Nidhoggr, a squirrel who runs up and down the tree ferrying insults between the two enemies. The tension may seem undesirable, but it actually promotes a cycle of growth in the tree of life. After the eagle and the dragon spend the day destroying Yggdrasil in their frenzy to attack each other, the tree is bathed in water from the wells of Urd, which promotes healing and new growth. So basically everybody, if you believe in Norse mythology, then we can thank Nidhoggr for helping to keep things afloat. He's also credited with punishing criminals though, and he's very brutal about it, so try not to piss him off. And finally, number 1 on this list is aliens. Well, this one seems pretty obvious, but if I didn't put it on the list, then I'd look like a freaking idiot. Aliens come from space. This is what makes them aliens. For centuries, in fact, even longer than that, humans have been looking up to the skies above and wondering if people or beings are up there chilling. And for quite a while now as well, there have been tons of sightings of these creatures, leading us to believe that there are in fact living creatures up there. In fact, at this point, it's pretty much common knowledge in the scientific community that there is life. I talked about it in a previous video on here that it's simply a numbers game. The universe being infinite means that there are literally billions and billions of galaxies with the potential to foster life. Therefore, it's actually super unlikely that there wouldn't be aliens. It also just makes way too much sense that they exist considering how many sightings that we've had. One super famous one is by Kenneth Arnold. Intelligencer says, Kenneth Arnold, a respected pilot, claimed in 1947 he'd seen 9 mostly flat objects whip past Mount Rainier at speeds he timed at 1,760 miles per hour. They were shaped like saucers, he reportedly explained, and were so thin I could barely see them. A neologism was born. Arnold, he demanded military personnel explain what the contraptions were if they knew, since he dismissed any possibility of them being guided missiles or new types of jets. His best guess, from another planet. Dozens of others came forward with similar sightings from as far away as Oklahoma and Arizona, but Arnold didn't enjoy his newfound celebrity. He said people had started shrieking in cafes when they saw him and fleeing. This is just one of the thousands of notable sightings that people have had about aliens in the past. They're definitely real and they definitely come from space.